Welcome back to the Gyrl podcast. I'm Kyra. Let's welcome Cami into the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here today, Kyra.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you're here because any talk about leadership and coaching and helping others to develop and become better leaders is just definitely something that I can rally behind. And God, I was just really like, yes, let's do this.
Yes. I love that.
So what we'll start with is having you tell the audience listening or watching who you are and what you do.
Okay, very good. So my name is Cami McLaren. My business is McLaren Coaching. I practiced law for 16 years. And then I took a coaching program because I thought it would help with my communication and personal growth and relationships. And in fact, it did. And, but I fell in love with it too, because coaching is a really cool thing wherein you get to like be with people as they figure out what they want, and as they get it, and it's just like, there's nothing like it. So quit practicing law, became a coach. And I've been coaching since 2008. Because I was a lawyer, often I think like lawyers were drawn to me. I did a lot of executive coaching. I do a lot of team coaching, a lot of leadership coaching. But also about in 2019, I started a coach training school, like a program for people, training people to become coaches, professional coaches, and also what we call coach style leadership. So leaders who want to also adopt some of those skills and ways of being that coaches have, right, within their organization. So in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Love it. I love it. Okay. So let's go into more about the coach style leadership. What is important about coach style leadership in an organization?
Yeah, good. Thank you. It's such a good question. So the way I usually explain it is this. I will make a distinction between traditional management and coach style leadership, right? And there is a quote that's been attributed to a few different people that says, you manage things, but you lead people. And the concept of traditional management for me is the way it's always been done, right? It's fear-based, it's disciplinary, it's top-down. It's hard for everybody, honestly. I've coached many managers who didn't love that either, but they didn't know another way to do it. And often what happens right now is like people get promoted from within, which is great, right? You know the actual technical aspect of your job, but you don't know how to lead people.
Right.
And it's frustrating for everybody, right? It's frustrating for the managers too. So I think that then they take on, without really thinking about it, they take on this way of being that's like instructional and top down and like fear-based in some way, right? Fear either of the person themselves or that I will lose my job or that I will get in trouble or that I will get a talking to, right? So that's all over here in traditional management. Coach style leadership is more like collaborative. It's more of a partnership. It's more of a way to be with people so that they want to do their jobs. There's a lot of statistics on what they call employee engagement in our country, which is like when people show up, are they really showing up? Or are they just bringing their body to work?
Right.
Or now, with COVID and Zoom and all of that, like not even to work, but, bringing their bare minimum. And so coaching is meant to have people get ownership, for over whatever. But in this instance, their work, right? Like, why am I doing this job? Why do I want to do this job?
Right.
What do I stand to gain from doing this job? Like what would make it important to me so that they actually then are the ones that are driving themselves to be better.
I love that because you're right. So many people are living in this like traditional style of management, because I wouldn't even know if I call it like leadership. It's like just traditional management where it is very fear-based and it's just like I said to do it. That's why you should do it. And there's like no collaboration. Everyone is living in fear. People hate meetings. People hate one-on-ones. And because there's nothing worse because I think at some point we probably all been in a situation of more just traditional like management. And I can recall just like hating like the weekly one-on-ones going, oh God, like it's getting close to that day where I have to have that one-on-one where it's going to be, I'm just going to be talked to at, not even talked to, but just talked
Yeah.
at and
Yeah.
told, these things. So I definitely, for me personally, my style with my team has always been coach style leadership, because it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you want people to like show up as their best self, and you want people to feel like, one thing for me, I had a manager who, I remember telling me this like years ago. She was like, it's like we're partners. You're not like my
Mm,
employee. She said, we're like partners. There are things that I'm good at. There are things that you're really great at that I'm not good at. And we partner together to do our best work. And I just remember walking away from that going, that's exactly like what good leadership feels like.
yeah. I think that's exactly right. I like what you said. Do it because I said, right? It sounds very parental, because I said
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. I was like, wait, is my mom around? Like what? Okay. Like last
Yes.
time I checked, we were all adults here, like literally all adult people. So
Yeah.
I mean, and of course, this example really lends itself to this next question. Like,
Mm,
why do you think coaching is so useful to members of an organization?
yeah. Well, it's all those reasons. And when we talk about coaching just as a professional coach,
Mm.
like our definition, the first word in the definition is partnering. It's
Mhm.
partnering with people. And I think sometimes leaders don't they don't like that idea because they think like, well, I'm still the boss, right? Like I'm still the one who
Mhm.
has to get you to do your job. And that's fine and that's good and that may be actually true. But what is the best way to get somebody to do their job? To force them or to scare them or
Right.
to motivate them or to be present with them in a
Mhm.
way that you can find out what the problem is, and
Mhm.
what's happening. And I think that when you spoke of being taught at, I think one of the biggest things that leaders do that is is hard to unlearn is that when they want something from their people, they tell them.
Mhm.
And when they see a problem, they also tell them. And when
Mhm.
they think that something's going wrong, they also tell them. And then they say more and more and more words.
Mhm.
And coaching is very much about asking, and listening. It's very much about like, you seem to be having a challenge here. What is
Mhm.
going on? What do you think is wrong? What do you think we should do about that? And
Mhm.
and hearing that, I was in an organization the other day, and they kept saying, we don't know. And they were all in the room together, Kara, and the people on the top were saying, we don't know what these people want. And literally, I said, have you asked them? And they said, no, they don't talk very much. They're very quiet.
Oh my
It's like,
goodness.
but it's and you can't really fault them. It's like the way they came up. It's the way
Mhm.
they know. I mean, most people, if they're trying to get something, will talk a lot instead of asking questions. It's a hard thing to unlearn, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's definitely terrible. But what a crutch, right? To say that they just don't talk that much. They're pretty quiet. And I understand, like I definitely understand that, because I work in marketing, and I work with a lot of people who are creatives who tend to be more introverted. So they're not
Mm,
always trying to tell you things, but I think it's important, for leaders to be able to find ways to meet people where they are, and then that way people become more comfortable with you, and then they open up more.
yeah, I think that's right. And I think that uh, coach style way of being is more effective. I don't think it's easier. I think it's probably easier to yell at people and tell them what to do.
Oh, yeah, of course.
It's ask questions and try to help them figure it out.
Yeah, to, like,
You know?
actually get down to the root cause of something.
Yeah.
Alright, now with that being said, let's talk about the benefits, because obviously
Mm,
we know, right? The benefits could mean people are going to actually be showing up as their authentic selves at work and ready to go.
yeah. Yeah. So many benefits. Well, okay. So yes, engagement, right? Showing up
Mhm,
ready to go,
mhm,
taking the lead themselves.
mhm,
Side note, I actually think that leader is really anybody who decides to follow a vision forward. I don't think you have to be called a manager to
mhm,
lead. Like there's a book called The Art of Possibility, and
mhm,
he talks about this metaphor of the orchestra, and this tool that he has is called leading from any chair. And it really needs to adopt the style of leading, to take ownership for something. And I think that's what you develop when you're a coach style leader. You develop people who want to lead, not necessarily have people follow them, but take the lead, be in ownership, and have accountability for what they're doing.
Yeah.
So that's a benefit. I think longevity is a benefit. Satisfaction is a benefit. Trust, like very trust building. Yeah. To be with people in this way. So, endless. I could probably think of more endless benefits.
But I definitely want to go back to trust, because I think that is something that a lot of people who have been trusted as leaders just don't understand. Like, if you do not have the trust of your peers, your team members, like, you've got nothing.
Yeah.
And I just feel like there's a certain arrogance with some leaders who just like, I don't know, they say they want the trust, right? They want people to trust them, but then they do the opposite, right? They do these things that definitely will lead you to go, no, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the things that we teach in our coach training program is that you can't really coach people if they don't trust you. Like, because to coach someone is to ask them to go farther than they would maybe go on their own. And so there's a number of books that we use. I started reading recently this book called The Thin Book of Trust. And one of the things that he starts out by saying, I love this introduction. They did these studies at work where they asked people to rate their own trustworthiness. How much do I think people trust me, right? And then they asked those same people to rate other people's trustworthiness. Okay. And they consistently rated themselves more trustworthy than other people. But then what you see is, if you turn that around, what that means is you find yourself more trustworthy than other people find you. Like, consistently, you think you are more trustworthy.
Right. Yeah.
So the reason for that, and I've read many trust books and they all say this, the reason for that is that different people build trust in different ways. Like, I could say, I'm going to show up to all my meetings on time. People will trust me, but I'm not emotionally available to certain people. And certain people experience trust by being able to tell me things, by being able to like open up to me, right? Or other people experience trust because of my competence. So everybody experiences trust. It's almost like the love languages, everybody experiences it differently. And so you can't just say I'm trustworthy by your own standard. You've got to find out how other people experience it.
Right. Yeah. That I definitely think that's a very interesting thing to look at, especially from a leadership perspective, because I think obviously I can only speak to, for me and how I try to lead people, but I know as being like in a team member and having, a manager myself, that once I feel like I can't trust that person, or I feel like, no, especially like in given situations of like, when you tell someone something, when I have a discussion with you about something and I remember the discussion and you say, no, but I had that idea. And I'm like, no, I clearly remember that was the idea I brought to this meeting and gave it to you. And then for a person to almost like argue and debate with you about who came up with it. And I'm thinking to myself, number one, I am the team member. So even if you think that I'm crazy and I don't remember that I, did a certain thing, if you want to build some kind of trust or rapport with me, maybe just like find a meet in the middle. I'm not 100%, like, I don't even think I tell me that. I go, okay, well, perhaps I misunderstood or I didn't remember correctly. And you did bring that idea to the table. So, kudos to, like that. Great job.
Yeah.
but don't try and tell me when I very well know, cause that's no way to build, like, trust was gone. At that point, I was like, oh, and we're done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because also you've lost sight of what the point is, what the end goal is, right? The end goal is to get what you want to get done at work. It's not to be right.
Exactly. Yeah. But that person was intent on like being right and going back and forth with me. to make me feel like I was crazy of sorts. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, this is quite interesting. So
Yeah.
yes, I feel like how do you, I'm pretty sure you meet with people, you meet organizations, and people may not feel like their leaders need the training.
Mm,
How do you go about influencing someone and saying, yeah, like this is really important?
yeah. Well, I would say two things about that. One is I think you're right that like people don't see it all the time. Often they don't. I think coaching's on the rise in organizations. I think it is starting to get more
Mhm,
popular.
mhm,
Um, but I think when I was working in law firms a long time ago, it was funny because they had a budget for all the like what they call the hard skills,
mhm,
like
mhm,
how to practice law, but they didn't have a budget for the soft skills, which is
mhm.
like how to stay healthy, how to
Right.
communicate, how
Yeah.
to build trust, right? And obviously the soft skills really are the hard skills, and it's taken a while for people to catch on to that.
Mhm,
So I think that usually what works best for me is to ask like, what's the end goal for you?
mhm,
Like, what is it you're trying to accomplish here, and how's it going for you,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And then asking often, I think the people, it's often HR that's a little, above
mhm,
the leaders. And in different organizations, some HR people think it's fine and some people know it's not fine. Right.
mhm.
But like if they think it's fine, then talking to the leaders themselves, like what is your end goal? Because when
Right.
I do a lot of I do this coach style leadership group coaching in-house. So it's like a
Mhm,
12-week program. And when I go to interview the leaders to see if they should be in the group, every time I say, "What do you want to get out of this?" And they always say, "I want to be a better communicator. I want to be a better leader. I want people to trust me." Like every time. It's every time. And I
mhm,
think even when people come into our coach training program, their number one thing is better communication. So
mhm,
people know that this is the thing that's affecting all of their results, is
mhm,
whether they
mhm.
communicate well or not. So I think it's
Right.
very much about looking at the result, is my answer to your
Right.
question.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think I like that. I think that's good. Because I just think, like you said, coaching is like on the rise. And even when I look at it in just like everyday individual style coaching and personal development, when people are always like, when I'm like, yeah, like you should have a coach. Like you definitely
Mm.
should have, like everybody should have a coach, right? I feel like everybody should have a coach and a therapist. Just me, just what I think. And I
Agreed.
just always hear people and they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, like I think I'm gonna look into that. I'm gonna look into that." But then I think when you bring it into your organization, because I've been in organizations where people are often like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna connect people to mentors," and I'm like,
Mm.
yeah, I hear you, but I really think you should bring in a professional. Like, I think, like, let the
Mm.
first step be getting people, tied to someone who specializes, someone who is trained in helping other people, learn how to communicate better. And then I feel like there should be a level if we're going to mentor, like, there should be a level of training because just because you are someone with a certain title in a company, it doesn't mean you're qualified to mentor someone else.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kyra, because the skill set of coaching is of asking questions and
Mhm,
listening and reflecting in a way that people find
mhm,
their own answers, right?
mhm,
And mentorship is fine for what it is, right? Which is to
mhm.
say, I've gotten to this level.
Yes,
You are here. You want to get to this level. You should do it the way I did it. Well, I mean, you're gonna have to be this particular person if you are going to do it that exact way.
exactly.
Everybody's got their own way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't, I mean, it's not a one size fits all. And just because you got it that way, it doesn't even mean that that's the thing that I need to do. I may just be interested in it and then I may discover, I don't think so. No, that's
No.
not what I want to do. But I just think when you want to elevate to that next level, like there has to be a level of like professional development, which to me is coaching because it is someone who is asking you the tough questions, somebody who is challenging you to think outside of the norm. It should be a conversation that leaves you uncomfortable because you're like,
Yes.
"Ugh." You're like, I didn't think, I didn't, like that person that helps you to stretch. And, I think about like coaching, like stretch goals when you're
Mm.
in like work and it's like, well, I've got this goal, but then the stretch goal would be this. And if I see people cringe when I talk about stretch goals at work, I'm like, we've got more work to do.
Yes. Yes. That's such a great philosophy. It's such a great coaching philosophy, right? Like the things you want are probably not inside your comfort zone because you would have them by now. Like
Yes.
everything that you want is out there somewhere. And if you're not
Mhm.
willing to be uncomfortable, then you're not going to get it.
Mhm.
And having somebody who you back to trust, right? Like who you trust enough to listen when they challenge you
Mhm.
is key. It's a key to growth, right? And getting out of like the status quo.
Exactly. So, Cami, when you go in and you start talking to leaders, what's the most important thing for them to know?
Mm, there's so many things, but I think I would, well, let me give you a few. First
Okay.
off, we just touched on one, right?
Mhm.
Listen and ask questions
Mhm.
more than you talk.
Mhm.
And in fact, in coaching, some coaches believe like there is this rule that if you distinguish coaching from, say, sales or somebody's trying to get you to do something in a different way,
Mhm.
that salespeople tend to talk about 80% of the time and ask questions and listen about 20%. And
Mhm.
coaching is the opposite of that, right?
Mhm.
Like if I ask you questions 80% of the time and listen to you, um, wait, am I saying that right? Anyway, flip it. Flip it. I talk 20% of the time.
Uh-huh.
Like that backwards. I talk 20% of the time, right? Like I ask a powerful question, right?
Mhm.
Because we call it in coaching, asking a question that means something to somebody and then let them start to unpack it,
Mhm.
right? Then they enroll themselves in what they want. They start to see for themselves what they want, why it's important to them. So
Mhm.
I really think like asking and listening is imperative and
Yes.
so much more important than telling people things.
Mhm.
People mostly already know the things, honestly, Tara. That's the
Mhm.
thing is like, I've had more leaders say like, I'm going to go tell them how to do it, but they pretty much already know how to do it. There's a
Mhm.
reason they're not doing it. And it's not because they don't know how to do it.
Mhm.
Right.
It's because they don't feel empowered to do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Something is in the way for them. And so
Mhm.
I think when you say the most important thing to know, it is empowerment, right? Like it is all
Mhm.
the things that go into
Mhm.
empowerment.
Yeah.
Um, I would say the second thing beyond asking and listening is to model accountability, which in coaching,
Mhm.
as you know, is a very not fault, not
Mhm.
punitive. It's like I own
Mhm.
my stuff, right? I own what goes right. I own what goes wrong.
Mhm.
And I model that for people so that they learn how to also own what their mistakes are and get past the blame piece of it and figure out what they can learn so that they can move forward. So I think cultivating a culture of that kind of accountability, like a curiosity about your mistakes
Mhm.
instead of like meanness about your mistakes is
Mhm.
another thing that is like just really imperative. But I think even when leaders know that it would be useful to have accountability, many leaders, it's kind of like what I think you were saying with the trust. Like, you trust me, but I don't have to do anything about it. Like you be accountable, but I'll be over here doing my own thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know? Like you've got to, leaders are models. You've got to
Mhm.
model accountability. You've got to take it on for yourself.
Mhm.
So I think
Yeah.
those are probably the two that popped to my mind as like the most important
Mhm.
ones.
I couldn't agree with you more because I think number one, for sure, there is a lack of active listening
Mm.
in this world. And
Mm.
I always like I pride myself on being someone that like actively listens to people before I speak. And so a lot of times I'm slow to speak because I
Mm.
want to hear you and I want to process what you said.
Yeah.
And then I want to give you a response. Like I don't want to rush to an answer while you're finishing your thought. And I'm like, okay, let me tell you. And
Yeah.
I think it's such a lost like art because so many people are, especially in corporate America, so many people are dinged because they're not already talking.
Mm.
Well, you've got to be saying something. I mean, you've got to say
Mm.
something. You're in a meeting.
Mm.
We want to hear from you. And it's like, no, like, let me just think about it. Let me let the person finish. Let me think about it. And then maybe somebody else has already said the thing that I was thinking, or perhaps I always tell my people, I'm like, you don't have to have something in the moment. If
Mm,
you want to go back to, you want to get out of the Zoom and then 10 minutes later, you send a Slack message saying, hey, I had a thought after that meeting. Or, I said, I appreciate those moments more than when someone is like barreling down everybody else or talking over people to say something.
yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. And I think it also speaks to like the difference between extroversion and introversion.
Hmm.
And, there's so much value in our culture placed on extroverts.
Hmm.
And I think like what you're doing is so great because you're offering people who might not speak up a way to speak up, right?
Hmm.
Like we have to hear from them also. How do we facilitate that?
Yeah. And it's okay. And I think too, because like you said, with people who are extroverts, it's like then you get dinged because I feel like because people think like, oh, she's extrovert. Is she ready to
Mm,
talk? No, no, no. I'm actually like somewhere on the borderline. I mean, I think I test as an extrovert, but I'm very much a person who like needs like I need like I need you to leave me alone. I need you to let
yeah.
me think. Need you to let me think about it, and then let me come back. I mean, I do understand from a leadership perspective that most times when we're in meetings and I'm in meetings with my team members, they are looking to me to have a response. But what I always try to do is I try to respond, but I try to include them. I try to invite them into the discussion as maybe the expert in the area. Oh, actually, let so and so, what do you think? Because you worked on something very similar to this. So I always try to make them feel like I no, I've got you. I've got your back. I know you're the expert. I'm just speaking out because you're looking to me to start the conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a quite interesting thing, that leadership is.
Yeah. I think you make me think about facilitating conversation, right, with a
Mhm,
team. Is it really is a skill because some people will keep quiet and some people will take over.
mhm.
And figuring out how to hold that,
Yeah,
space so that the quieter people will speak and the other
mhm,
people will maybe like think for a minute
mhm.
it's a real skill.
Yeah, because the people that are jumping at the bit, I mean, those people are like, I mean, I could like just be putting myself to say like, okay, so who? Oh, well, actually, I had a thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, you always have a thought, but can we hear another person?
Yeah.
Can we hear another person's thought? Okay, all right. So no, I love that.
Mm,
So I would say my question to you, if there were people out there listening and they were thinking to themselves, my organization could really benefit from this type of coaching. How would you recommend that someone might bring this to perhaps maybe an HR team
mhm.
um, to um, to try and get it implemented?
Yeah. Well, I can only speak to like what I do and what I know about it.
Mhm,
So for me there's multiple points of entry. One is um one or two key people get trained as coaches.
mhm,
One is to bring a program in. I think that shorter programs maybe don't last. The effect maybe doesn't last as long.
mhm,
But I think when you bring like I have a half day coach style leadership, right? And I do that
mhm.
publicly, but I also do that in house. And if you bring it in house, then everybody has the same information, right? So they're more
Right.
likely to at least understand it. The most effective thing I have found is I like the program I told you about earlier is a 12-week program. And that way, every week they're practicing and they're practicing, they're
Mhm,
practicing. And
mhm,
then the HR, this is a large company I'm talking about. And then the HR person at the end of each 12 weeks goes and finds other leaders. And so they've gone through it like three different times.
mhm,
And I think it's like a tipping point, like this is not easy stuff to
mhm,
learn. I mean, I feel like
mhm,
the more people in your organization understand it and work with you on it, the
mhm.
more that you're going to change the culture of the organization.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like you have to I think people just, have to be open, have to have an open mind. And you
mm,
have to be, I think you mentioned earlier about being curious. Like
yeah.
I think when you're curious and you have mindset for learning, then you are already setting yourself up for the win, right? Because you're open to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really true. Which made me think there may be another way to do it is there's a multitude of books out there on
Mhm.
this kind of thing, right? Like the growth mindset, there's a growth mindset
Mhm.
book. There's
Mhm.
so many books. And I imagine that you could also do that, like do in-house,
Mhm.
book studies or whatever. But
Yeah.
I would find somebody who is at least trained as a coach or,
Exactly. That's what I think.
yeah.
I agree. I think you have to do that. Okay, so Cami, why don't you tell the audience about how to connect to you and any programs that you want to talk about with us?
Okay. Connecting with me, my website is McLaren Coaching. I'm guessing you'll have that spelled out
Yep.
in the show notes.
Yes.
And my Instagram, same McLaren Coaching. There's a little. I think there's an underscore between the two words. I'm on Instagram a lot. Programs I have coming because I am currently enrolling for my year-long program. I'm doing a lot
Hmm.
of like lead-ins to that people can do, whether or not they do the longer program. So July 27th starts our year-long coach training program.
Okay.
It's in person. It's in Sacramento. Um, and then in Sacramento, we're doing a coach style leadership half day, the one I just talked about, which we teach reflective listening and curiosity, and clear agreements and accountability. That's April 17th. And then what I'm doing as a lead into the program is every month I do uh, a Zoom call called Game Changers using
Mhm.
coaching to level up. And they're each hour and a half calls. And they're like $35. And you come in and I teach one coaching skill. So I did one yesterday,
Mhm.
curiosity and worldview. In April, we're doing deep and reflective listening. In May, we're doing accountability. Cannot remember what we're doing in June. So on my bio, my link tree, in Instagram, it's got
Mhm.
links to all those things. And so what's cool about that is if you have this sense of like, maybe I'd like to find out what coaching is, the game
Mhm.
changers will not only tell you what coaching is, but they will give you a tool to use in your life, like right now. And even if you don't think you have any interest in coaching, you can come to them for a very low entry fee, and like learn this
Mhm.
skill. So I like it because most of my stuff's in person because I really believe that coaching is very relational and we should be
Mhm.
together. And so what I like is that, people from all over the country come to the game changers because
Yes.
they're
Yeah.
on Zoom.
Yeah. I love
And
that.
yeah,
Awesome. Yeah. I think that's great because that's what I was thinking. I'm like, now people who may not be in Sacramento, you can still learn from Cami. So get
yeah,
on Game Changers, y'all. All right.
yeah.
Fantastic. So we are now going to shift into three things with Cami and ask you three questions that helps our audience
Mm.
just get to know you a little bit better. The first question is a two-parter. It is how do you start and end the day?
Okay. So when my children were like really, really young, I realized that I did not have any time to myself because they got up
Mhm.
super early in the morning.
Mhm.
And so that was the time that I started getting up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. So I get up anywhere between 5 and 6. I
Mhm.
vary my program on different days, but
Mhm.
honestly, my kids are in their 20s now, and so at least 20 years now,
Mhm.
what I've done consistently is get up early, always read something inspiring. This is why I can always quote you a book on like any
Mhm.
topic.
Mhm.
Always read something inspiring. Right now, I'm
Mhm.
reading a book called Resilience. Such a great book. Um, and journal and write out my outcomes for the day.
Mhm.
And then at the end of the day, I have like a wind down. I stretch. I do physical. I stretch in the morning and the evening. The older I
Mhm.
get, the more I realize like that's imperative. Um, and then I do just in my mind, just like gratitude as I'm falling
Mhm.
off to sleep. Like, what am I grateful for?
Right.
And it's sort of like it bookends it. And so then in the morning, I go back to the outcomes for the prior day and I go like, how'd I do? And I do it again. And I set an intention for the day also. I forgot that part. I set an intention for like how I want to be during the day.
Yes, I love that. And speaking of intentions or goals, what's one that you set for yourself this year?
Mm, um, gosh, so many. I'm trying to think of a new one. But I'm going to go back to my program.
Mhm.
Our goal is to have a full program. 20 people.
Mhm.
We've never had 20. We've gotten 18 one year. So our intention, and I have like 30 people working with me on this who've been through, because I've trained 50 coaches and they're like raving fans. And so I have like 30 of them have actually opted into this program where they go look for other people to be in this program because they love it so much. And so that really is my goal, is to work with them so they're empowered to enroll for their own programs, their own, businesses, but also so that they know how to talk to people about this if they want to, if they find people who are like, I'm not about trying to sell to people who are not interested in coaching, but getting more like exposure, and letting people know what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I love that. And last, what do you do for self-care?
Oh man. I think the first thing is that I do for self-care is pay attention to whether I need it. Like that's a big, right? So there's maintenance and then there's, oh my God, I know the warning signs, of like, I better stop. So for self-care is a like mixture of things. The thing I do in the morning is a big part of it.
Yep.
Meditation. I go to spin class a few times a week. I walk a few times a week. I spend time with my dog. So things of that nature, I really think kind of this like an ongoing question is if I feel burned out or stressed, then I know that I've got like, maybe there's something I haven't thought of yet.
Right.
That I really also nap every day. Every day I nap for like 20 minutes.
Nice.
Need a living, man.
I like it. All right. Well, Cami, before I let you go, can you give the audience 3 things you'd like them to take away from our discussion today?
Yeah, well, I guess I have to say, listen more than talk. Listen and be curious more than talk. That might be 2 things. I'm going to combine them. Be curious to people, ask questions, and listen is number 1. Number 2, everybody's a leader. And you get a choice in this life as to whether to believe that or not. If you don't, you can sail right on through. But if you know that you're a leader and you know that people are going to watch you and people are going to follow you, then maybe you have a responsibility to stand up and be accountable and take responsibility for like what you put out in the world and what people take away from you. What's number 3, Kyra? I think it's going to be about empowerment. I think it's going to be about what you said that resonated with me was like that all of these things are about empowerment, right? Listening, self-care is about empowerment, right? And the word empowerment means knowing that your power is inside of you. Right? So I think all 3 of those things go together, and being a leader and being empowered are very similar concepts. I like knowing that you have the power to influence people, and that like there's a lot of things in this world that are not great. And I think that if you knew that you were a leader, every single person knew that they were a leader, I think things would change. Right? Because do you really want to be leading people down this particular path?
Exactly. Yes. I like that. I love that. Awesome. Oh, well, Cami, thank you so much for sharing this space and sharing your knowledge with our community. You can always come back to see us in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. But really, Kyra, thank you for like the people that you have. Like what you're doing, you have had the most brilliant people on your program.
Oh, thank you.
And your desire to empower and lift up women and leaders is so needed right now. So I really appreciate that you do this.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Well, stay tuned, everyone. I'll be right back.